was making a cup or object, and turns out God was making me. If you're feeling pressed, trimmed, thrown in the fire, this one's for you. So, back in October, I took a pottery class for my birthday. Not to be deep, not to be spiritual, just actually to be fun and do something creative, something new, something with my hands. But what I didn't know is that it would take almost 2 months, 7 weeks later, when that cup, my object, came back and it spoke to me. So many of you know I grew up a church kid, a PK kid. I heard the scripture all my life. Like clay in the hand of the potter, so are you in my hand. Jeremiah 18:6. So sitting at the wheel, the potter's wheel, feeling the clay that day, lump size, throw it on the wheel. The clay resisted, it wobbled, it collapsed for some people, and it even found a way to rise again. And finally, I understood it. This little blue, quote unquote, wine cup, whatever you want to call it, this elevated piece, thing with my birthday, became a mirror of my becoming. So there were a few takeaways, and I want to share. Each week, I had a takeaway. The first lesson I learned is before the potter shapes anything, the clay must be centered. So we took the lump of clay, we threw it on the wheel, and it was like, what do we do next? And as I threw it on the wheel, it was almost like I heard God whisper, I'm centering you before I elevate you, because it had to be centered. I realized that this centering process wasn't rejection, but it was actually alignment. The second lesson, takeaway. The potter's hand never leaves the clay. So if you lift the clay too soon, the vessel will collapse. That's not what you want. I realized there's seasons that I thought in my life where I was alone, but this cup has reminded me I was held the entire time. So basically, God's hands never leaves the clay. Third lesson, number three, takeaway. Clay that hardens too fast cannot be shaped. So the clay that's too wet loses control. So when we centered it on the wheel, we had to take a lot of water and kept putting it in the clay to make sure there was enough water wet. And we beat kind of the clay, but the clay has to stay soft, and that's what the water does. So I would say God knows how to balance the process, the stretch, the stillness, the pressure, even in moments where we would pause to shape the object into what we decided we wanted to create. The fourth lesson, the fourth takeaway, pottery is shaped by pressure from the inside as well as the outside. So I realize that there's internal growth as well as external challenges, but that's how capacity is built. That's how character is formed. Pressure didn't necessarily elevate me or you, but it strengthened my walls. But then came the waiting. So I thought on day one I was taking my project home. That's not the case. When the shaping stops, the clay must sit. It must sit to dry. It has to be still. There's an unmoving process. And with no progress, there's no applause, just waiting. And the kind of waiting that feels like nothing is happening is usually the season where everything is happening. Elevation always has a silent season. So I had to wait another 3 weeks on my project before they called me back. The fifth lesson, after the drawing and the object is actually flipped, it's trimmed. So excess is cut away, weight is removed, they make it real smooth. But what I realized is before God elevates you, he subtracts. So not everyone, everything, not every version of you can go where you're headed. I'm gonna say that again. Not everyone, not everything, not every version of you can go where you're headed. Sixth lesson, number six takeaway. Before the color, which I picked blue, before the shine, before the beauty, the clay must survive its first fire. It's got to go through the fire. It's like Shaka Khan. We're going through the fire. The fire is not here to decorate you, but to fortify you. So some seasons aren't meant to make you pretty. They're actually meant to make you strong, strong enough to carry what's coming. My seventh lesson, takeaway. When I painted the cup blue, as I picked my color, it looked real dull that day I went into paint. It looked chalky. It was flat. I was unimpressed. It was unimpressive. But God said, like, some seasons you look dull because you haven't been fired yet. Because there's a second fire. And the second fire, that's kind of where the brilliance is revealed. So I had to wait for my project another 3 weeks. This is where the color deepens, the shine appears, the finish is sealed. So the fourth quarter of 2025 clearly needed some fire, not to burn me, but to seal me. And every potter, at the very end, you find out every potter signs their work. Something initial, something signifies, something small, sometimes very subtle, but I missed that part. And so do you, and so do I. So God's signature is on your part. I made it really big. I didn't understand the concept. But in every process, every elevation, and every becoming, there's a signature. So if you're in the shaping or the trimming, if you're in the waiting, maybe you're in the pressing, maybe you're in the first fire or back in the fire again. If I say nothing else, then what I've learned is that you're not breaking. You're actually becoming. And you're not behind. You are being refined, not forgotten. But what I realized is that you're being formed because we are all clay in the potter's hands. And the masterpiece is still emerging. So if you're still wondering why it took so long, like I said, 7 weeks, I thought it was coming out on day one. Why it cost so much, it was kind of an expensive class, but it was worth it. Why it required the fire twice, remember this. God doesn't rush masterpieces. He doesn't sign unfinished work. That part. That's not the delay. That's actually the design. Who knew the cost of saying yes would cost so much? So I'm excited about my cup. Let me just say that. I can do whatever. I can drink out of it. I can microwave it. As long as I don't put it in the dishwasher, I'm good. But something fun, creative, birthday, because my birthday was elevated, nonstop to elevate it. So, of course, I signed it big, not understanding what I was signing. I'm excited that I took this class. Biggest takeaways, sometimes when it looks like it's easy and nothing's happening, everything's happening. Sometimes you got to hit the fire twice, but trust and believe. If it's not finished, you just have to wait a little while longer.